Not everyone can say they've been on top of the world, but if you're in Russia, you've got a better chance than most. There are only 8 countries on the planet that stretch above the Arctic Circle, and this is one of them. And if you go to the right spot, you can see the most spectacular light show on Earth, the Aurora Borealis. It was midwinter, and I was taking the scenic route for the next 36 hours. Well, according to this, the further north we go, the less daylight I'm actually going to be seeing, because we should be arriving in Murmansk right in the middle of their polar nights, and that is 40 days of almost total darkness. But up here, even when it's pitch black, it can still be beautiful. I was heading to a famous observatory, and my Polar Express was well on its way. Yaroslav?
Hi, James. Welcome to the observatory. We've been looking at the aurora here for, well, ages. Come in, make yourself at home, and later we'll put you in the picture.
They've been studying the aurora up here for more than 50 years, so I'm never going to have a better chance in Russia to see it than right now. I just have to wait and hope.
So, James, let me show you where our engineers view the information from all the transducers in the observatory. This camera takes pictures of what's going on in the sky when it's dark. We also get information about magnetic pulses, about high-frequency variations in the magnetic field, and data on the geomagnetic field. All these phenomena are what's connected to the aurora. The northern lights can be seen across an oval-shaped area that's centered on the south and north magnetic poles. And the sun, that serves as the source for particles. The northern lights are a gift of nature. We see what's going on in near-Earth outer space. All the plasma effects that are being studied in laboratories can be seen here in the north, if you study the northern lights closely. Judging by our sunrise data, activity at the moment is quite moderate, and we can see the lights. Probably not today, but in a day or two, because it takes the plasma about 2 days to travel from the sun to the Earth. But those permanently dark days can be very long if you're not used to them. And Yaroslav decided to introduce me to one of the more popular local pastimes. Now, we're not exactly surrounded by shops out here, so fresh food in the lab is in rather short supply. And Yaroslav here has invited me out to try a little night fishing. So we're going to see if we can get them biting under the stars. James, you know, people here really enjoy fishing during the long polar night. They get so carried away by it that they become oblivious to anything else. If you're lucky enough to catch one, you'll enjoy eating it. It tastes so good you wouldn't want to eat any other kind of fish. There's nothing like it. I know of nothing tastier than fish caught in the long polar night. So, no pressure then. But fortunately, Yaroslav turned out to be a very good teacher. Hang on a second.
Yeah?
Есть.
You got a bite?
Есть.
Pull it out, pull it out. Don't let it go. Oh, you're lucky. That's a beautiful fish. It's a dogfish. It's very healthy because it has all sorts of vitamins that are hard to find in the winter. That's why we make soup from it, and fillets too. And dogfish liver is simply delicious.
That big.
That's a big fish indeed.
Wow.
With dinner safely stowed away, we headed back to the observatory to check on the forecast. Unfortunately, the aurora can be very unpredictable, and it seemed that once again, we were going to be out of luck. I could see that everyone was starting to flag, but if we weren't going to see the Northern Lights, at least we could hear about them. Go on. Show me how it's done.
Я когда-то свой дом покидал, из Москвы уезжать не хотел и не думал про Ревду тогда, что она станет родиной мне, где над головой полярная звезда укрыла северным сиянием. Ах, Лавозерье, горная страна, страна чудес, страна бескрайная.
We ate, we sang, we studied, and everyone slept. Except me. I've never been awake more than 48 hours in my life, but up here, I just couldn't drop off. I'd put it down to excitement, but I was starting to feel seriously unwell, and by the time day 3 rolled around, I knew I was going to have to get some help.
James, what's the problem?
Well, basically, I can't sleep at all, and it's been already 3 nights.
We'll carry out a few tests and we'll try to help you. Well, James, you're more or less okay. But it seems that the polar night has this effect on you, because your level of adaptation has only just reached the norm. You see, and not more than that. Your actual age is 34, but our machine, after all the tests, shows 29. So, in a sense, you've become younger in the north. But the price of that youth is not feeling too well. We'll try to help you with our relaxation methods.
Very fetching, no doubt.
Also, I recommend you activate the right side of your brain. Paint, listen to music, dance, but also stick to a diet. Try to eat the food that northern people traditionally eat.
It seems that this so-called polar stress is very common to visitors at this time of year. And when it's as bleak and cold as this on the street, it's pretty easy to see why. Riding a local trolley bus, it was clear that I wasn't the only one who was feeling exhausted. I wanted to get better, and so it was time to take some of my doctor's advice. The Agni restaurant not only has one of the best views, but also serves up some of the best food in Murmansk. Local businessman Vladimir has lived here for almost 50 years and has his own theories on how to survive the polar nights.
The polar night lasts for 40 days. People get tired of it because they don't know what to do. During the polar night, you have to move a lot. and eat well.
Of course, it's important to eat well.
And sometimes when you get stressed out, you just have to drink 100 grams of vodka.
Well, they say that overeating can be one of the side effects of seasonal affective disorder, but I can tell you now that this is going to make me feel a whole lot better.
Here you can see cowberries, cranberries, cloudberries, and others. All of them are sources of vitamins. Local food is rich in proteins, like this salmon. It's always fresh because it's brought here from where it's bred. What you have on your plate is freshly salted salmon. Only takes 7 minutes to salt it. It's my own invention. As a result, all the vitamins and nutrients are preserved. It's a very healthy food.
After I'd polished off several courses, Murmansk certainly seemed a whole lot brighter. Although, admittedly, it's had help from the powers that be, who've tried to add a little sparkle to the dark city centre.
I've only been working here for a month. We've had 4 different designs: a polar night, an anchor, boats and fish in waves. Everyone loved it. What's more important, these are made with LEDs, so they last for a long time. They save energy and are less expensive, so we also save money.
Maybe it was the good food, maybe it was the lights and the gigantic Christmas tree. But my depression of the last few days had turned into a strange euphoria. And my new friend Vladimir had promised me he had another foolproof way of making me feel better. Almost everyone in Russia loves a banya, but much like their climate, the men of Murmansk make it a little extreme.
Here we go. Let's make the leaves a little hotter.
Right, now this is where I think all Russians are completely bloody insane.
Jump! Now turn around, turn around. Quickly. And run back to the banya.
I was starting to get used to the 24-hour darkness up here in the far north. But I was just a tourist. More than 300,000 people live here year-round, and many have their own way of making the long winters a little more bearable.
I'm going to tell you about how interior decorations should be fashioned to match the conditions prevalent in the far north. Considering that it's pitch dark outside, we have to have as much light as possible inside. In this flat, we use 110 lamps to provide good lighting.
Magic.
In this flat, we used bright colors. We have yellow because it's known to affect people in a good way and evoke positive emotions. We've also used purple because it's a color that's bright and makes us feel more optimistic. We have many flowers in this flat to create, even though they're artificial, well, the feeling of warmth and summer. Okay, done.
And, much better, eh? Well, it might be dark outside, but at least we've brightened up the inside a bit. Whew. And if you're looking for really bright buildings, there's one that can be seen for miles around. Of all the things you might expect to find north of the Arctic Circle, a botanical gardens probably isn't high on the list. But it just goes to show that with a little ingenuity, you can grow anything almost anywhere. There are more than 1,000 tropical plants here from all over the world, and over the years the scientists and botanists have worked to adapt them to the Arctic conditions.
The right conditions for plants inside the Arctic Circle during the polar night are created thanks to special lighting and special lamps. This is done so that local residents can see what plants you can grow at home, so that they can always have such plants in their houses to generate a good mood and lots of positive emotions.
And if you're feeling that you're lacking that all-important vitamin C, why not pick up your very own lemon tree?
Here, James, try a real Pavlovsky lemon grown here in the north.
My first ever Arctic lemon. All right. Well, that should keep the scurvy at bay for a while. Murmansk was only founded in 1916, but there have been people living and surviving up here for thousands of years. And the Sami, Europe's northernmost indigenous tribe, have their own techniques for getting through the winter.
Hello, James. Nice to meet you. Have you come from far away? Anyway, welcome. We'll heat you some tea, get you warm, and we'll get to know each other. These winter nights are very harsh for us. We've only got 3.5 hours at our disposal. So, to begin with, we use that time to inspect our reindeer and count them. Aside from that, we also do some stitching. We make different things, like these little things made from bone used to untie knots. We also make bales. It's man's work, so we do many things with our hands.
The Sami's tradition and their arts have long since moved beyond their villages, and for almost 40 years they've had their own higher educational institution dedicated to preserving the craft. The Northern National College has more than 100 students from across the region who've come to study and teach others about the Sami way of life. They work with traditional materials such as reindeer skin, wood, and bone. And as my doctor had advised that working the right-hand side of my brain would protect against any further polar stress, it seemed like a perfect place to get creative.
After people were done with household chores like reindeer slaughter, fishing, and gathering berries in autumn, the Sami families dedicated their time to working creatively. They found the time to decorate utensils and knives and other things. And I guess maybe it's the creative work we see today that helped those people to survive during those long and cold polar nights.
I'd just about managed to shake off my polar stress, and I'd seen how the local people deal with theirs. It was time to head back to the observatory. I'd had a call from Yaroslav, and the aurora was coming. At around 2 a.m. we drove out, and I checked the prognosis with the lab's chief astronomer, Sergei. Okay, Sergei, what do we have?
So this is Spitsbergen, the Kola Peninsula. It's gone all the way from the north to the Kola Peninsula. We should be able to see it at the horizon. This is the Kola Peninsula. This is the southern boundary of the oval for polar lights. We can see everything on the map. Our forecast works. Everything's great.
I set up my camera and waited. And just under an hour later, the most spectacular light show on Earth began.
This is incredible. I can see why so many people say that this is one of the few things they want to see before they die. I'm at the top of the world, and I feel on top of the world right now.
I know people see unusual things in the aurora, but for me, it seemed like a herd of different animals was almost moving across the sky. It was one of the most amazing things I'd ever seen, and I couldn't have been more grateful to Yaroslav, Sergei, and their colleague Valentin Zhiganov. I knew nothing was going to compare to seeing the Northern Lights, but I still had a few days left before I had to be back in Moscow. Time enough to take up Vladimir on another one of his offers.
We have a few slopes here. One of them is set aside for training. This one is for beginners. It's 800 meters long. And there are also 3 slopes that are for skiers with very high skill levels. Skiing gives you adrenaline. You come here, you ski, and you forget about being tired and sleepy during the long polar night. Then you go to work, all happy and ready for another day.
Assuming you don't break your leg, of course. I'd only been skiing a few times before, and certainly never at night. Still, he did say it was for beginners.
Oh. Whew. Well, Vladimir certainly wasn't wrong about the adrenaline rush. And not being exactly able to see where you're going certainly adds a bit of extra spice.
It seems that come night or day, everyone up here loves their winter sports. And it's the theme for this year's Snow Village, one of the region's most popular tourist attractions.
I've actually been covering the Winter Olympics down in Sochi, and it's great to see that they're obviously getting into the spirit of things up here as well. And quite frankly, if the people of the north can ski through a polar night, then bringing back a few gold medals should be no problem at all. The village is designed from scratch every year by a team of talented builders and artists, and each one has the chance to create something close to their heart.
Well, sometimes you're in low spirits and you just want everything to go to hell and leave this place for good. But then, as soon as you see the sun's rays again, for the first time, the depression goes away and you're filled with happy feelings. Once again, you want to live here, of all places. And once again, you become aware of your devotion to this place.
After 40 long polar nights, this was the first light of the new year, and I was taking it in with the people who valued it most here over the centuries, the Sami. But with only a few minutes to enjoy it, we had to make the most of it.
Ha 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 ha! The sun takes more victims.
That's not all. Get ready.
Don't actually know what's going on here.
Let me
Might be
explain.
interesting. Could be painful.
The Sami didn't have ropes, so they used a stick. Now we'll find out which of the teams is stronger. Let's go. Friendship wins.
The return to daylight is marked with a series of traditional Sami games, like this reindeer skin football. And when the tourists join in, things can get pretty competitive.
Last-ditch defending. No good.
Football never was my game, but it turns out I'm not bad with a lasso.
Yes. Yeah. Much better, much better. What a way to celebrate the first light, huh? Hunting and exercise.
It was time for me to head for the train back to Moscow and home. But travelling through deep snowdrifts, even in daylight, isn't exactly easy. Unless, of course, you've got a few experts taking the lead.
I'm really quite sad that these intense polar nights have come to an end. But I've got to see the Aurora Borealis, and I've shared the first light of the new year with the Sami. And I think there's only one way to end my dark northern adventure. Поехали!